Minutes to 9. The hope is that the worst is over in the most recent Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo. This one is the 10th since the virus was discovered in the mid-1970s, and it began in 2018. Confirmed cases have decreased in the last 3 months. David Gressly, the UN Emergency Ebola Response Coordinator for the Democratic Republic of Congo, is visiting the UK at the moment and is here in the studio. Good morning, Mr. Gressly. Can you say that the worst is over for this outbreak?
Well, it's certainly we're in the best position we've been in since the beginning of this outbreak in 2018. Significant reduction of cases. We were over 25 cases a week, down to approximately 5 to 10 a week, one a day on the average. So much better position, and we can see a way forward.
Why do these outbreaks happen so often in the DRC?
Well, there's a reservoir in the rainforest that carries an animal reservoir. It's not really, we're not clear what that reservoir is. But as you see increasing population and pressure up against that forest, increasing contact, we're seeing a more frequent number of epidemics come out since 2014, in fact.
So does that mean that although the worst you hope is over with this one, the next one could be around the corner?
That's correct. There could be an 11th at any moment.
And what else can be done to combat that? There's at least one Ebola vaccine that is already in use. Is it making a difference?
Well, I think that's the way forward for the future, is to move away from the kind of epidemic response we've seen for the last 10 epidemics to one that's more normalized, like any other disease. The fact is that we now have one licensed vaccine, another experimental one that's being tested. But also we have treatments that are now seen to be effective. And so those new technologies allow us to start to move the Ebola response to something more normalized, as I mentioned, and be easier to manage in the future, to prevent and to treat.
Ideally, in a part of the world like this, which is so susceptible to this, would you like to vaccinate the entire population, or at least the children?
Well, anybody who's at risk would ideally you'd want to vaccinate. That's absolutely the case. And as I said, these tools, if they can be put into a normal health system, then we'll be in a really good position to limit the
But this is not a normal health system.
This is a part of the problem for the future, is to rebuild the health system in that part of the whole country, actually. You need strong surveillance to detect the epidemics and a strong response to go with that. So that's a big job ahead.
The Archbishop of Canterbury was there not long ago to see the extent of the crisis and to see how the Church can support the response. Can it?
Absolutely. We work quite closely ourselves with religious leaders. They're very influential on the ground, all denominations, and it's extremely helpful to have them send out the kind of messages that are necessary for the response. The different denominations are well respected by communities and therefore very influential.
Because otherwise people, fear the health workers or don't trust what they're trying to do?
Well, this is the first time this area has ever had an Ebola outbreak, so nobody knows what Ebola is. And when you have a team come in that's dressed in protective gear, and it can be quite frightening. And the fact that you have to isolate victims, or you have to bury those who have died in a very careful way, is disruptive to normal practice. So it's frightening for people.
David Gressly, thank you very much.
My pleasure.